Good afternoon, everybody. It's January 18th, 2023, approximately 12:38 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm here again to just give you some more information about the corruption and fraud that's going on in Jamaica, and that we really need the help of the Jamaican people to make a difference. It's one thing to say that my partners and I are suffering over 15, 16 years of this corruption and abuse, but it's also important for you to recognize that the effects that we've been feeling also affects the Jamaican public, the Jamaican economy, and people generally. Each time a major development or a major investment in a country is lost, that means lost revenue. It means government has to come up with some other alternative to fund the economy, and typically they turn to the citizens. And in an economy as bad as Jamaica, increased taxation is not a welcome event on anybody, because it doesn't work for the citizens, it doesn't work for investors, and it causes the country to slide further into economic chaos. Now it's important that I make a statement today specific to what's going on with Mr Usain Bolt and what has happened to him. Now, we've been signaling and shouting and writing letters to the fraud squad, everybody, in terms of regulation and regulators from 2010, and we're still here 2023 with our business and our lives completely tied up by corruption that nobody wants to fight, because the primary players are themselves corrupt by not attempting to fix the issues which are within their control. And I'm not going to hesitate again to call for the resignation of Justice Sykes, because he's a primary party that has been allowing this to continue, especially in the courts where it's important. And now Mr. Bolt has lost a significant amount of his hard-earned money, and it's regrettable. And it's because this liberal attitude of fraudsters and corrupt persons that feel they can do this and get away with it, because they've been doing it and getting away with it. And even though they have locked up one person, come on, it can't be one person that was aware of all of this going on. A major institution, financial institution that's regulated, and according to the news releases, if correct, the FSC has had them under their management or control for more than 4 years, indirectly or directly. So the FSC cannot now wash its hands and say it is clean. This is not, was it Pontius Pilate who washed his hand clean of the murder of Christ? It's the same thing. You can't now, after you're the regulator who has been aware of funny stuff going on in that institution for God knows, before 5 years, if you took it over, or you were involved with indirect or direct management of it for 5 years. So it must have been going on before. And sadly enough, you could have saved Mr. Bolt and others, because even though his money was significant, each person that lost even 10,000, 2,000, or $1 invested was significant to them. So it's all those persons that are now hurting. And God forbid the people who have been affected by other institutions that are not mentioned here. But the silver lining behind this event is that Mr. Bolt's experience, and because of his status and recognition, is bringing the attention that this matter really needs. And it's just not about corruption involved in securities firms. It's about corruption across the board. And the significant factor here is that regulators, law enforcement, had the opportunity to prevent this from happening, and they refused. Now, we've been saying this from we started our campaign, and we put out our public videos. With the premiere launched some 2 weeks ago, and we've been getting some interesting responses. Mostly, though, that people are outraged and are shocked that this is going on in the Supreme Court. And not only going on, but we've provided the proof and the evidence, and we've provided and added subsequent videos that show that we're not just talking off the top of our heads, or we're just angry. We actually have the evidence, and the facts are there. In fact, it was last week I sent another letter to the registrar this time, and I CC'd everybody in the court and JCF that we needed to know who was ultimately responsible for setting matters to be heard. Because as we've indicated, one of our problem is that we've had matters in front of this court that has not been set, and nobody wants to set it. And this has been going on for decades in some cases. Case in point, we sued the FSC from 2007, and regardless of how we tried to get that matter in front of the court, we sued them for defamation. And I think maybe about 8 years ago it came up for a hearing because they were trying to get out of it, and of course the court ruled against them. But we've been trying to get that matter set to be heard from the time we filed 2007 until now. And it can't be negligent on our part. And we've written to the registrar, to the court, and we've CC'd everybody in there, including Justice Sykes, that we need to know what's happening with these matters. Obviously, I believe it's a conflict of interest for the Attorney General's office to be defending anybody accused of defamation that's working for that agency or worked for that agency. It's a major conflict of interest with the public's interest. Government should not be defending persons who are accused of any crimes. They should be are abusing their authority. And that's what happened in our matters. The FSC went and alleged that we were involved in securities and all of that, made statements, threatened other businesses from doing business with us. And so we decided, rather than continuing business, we put it on hold and filed a lawsuit for them to show the public and show us where we were breaking any laws. They couldn't, because we weren't doing anything illegal. But that said, the government, and I'm saying the government, has allowed the Attorney General's office, because of their status, to prejudice this case. And again, there are persons in the court who deliberately refuse to have this matter come up for hearing. Now, defamation, the burden of proof is on the defendant. And all we're asking is that these people be put to the test. So when I hear the FSC coming up today talking about Mr. Bolt and his situation and those other parties, because I repeat, it's not only Mr. Bolt that's hurting here. If one person lost 10,000 or 2,000, 3,000, that's their hard-earned money that they put in there under the guise and trust of these people. And I'm not totally going to condemn everybody there, because everybody there probably wasn't involved. But there's the main players, the leadership, the buck stops with them. And so to arrest one person and charge them who is said to have been doing something illegal certainly can't be sufficient to deal with the kind of loss that we saw in the, not even the media, on social networks. And that's the other really sad thing about Jamaica, is that the Gleaner, the Mirror, the Observer, the media houses, the Gleaner Group or the RGR Group or whatever their names are, all have a hand in making sure that corruption stays alive. Because we've been filing documents with these persons, or those persons who head up, including last week. All we wanted to do was place an ad for people to go look at the video about corruption, and we were told that the Gleaner would not allow it. Now, why would a newspaper refuse to allow people or direct people to go look at evidence and fraud in the court? Why? They're saying they can't allow us to they will take our advertisement. We weren't asking them to do it for free. We were paying. They said I wouldn't do it. Of course, the Mirror had told us that before, and therefore the press has a lot to do with what's going on in terms of corruption in this country, and in fact crimes. And the excuse can't be because what they keep saying, oh, it's in court. Well, what we wanted to publish wasn't in court. We already won that case, and all we're working towards is to get a final order on our damages. The case was dismissed and ruled in our favor on more than one occasion. So this argument about being in court, and why are newspapers taking the position that because matters are in court, they are restrained or barred from publishing anything about the stories? And that's not true, because I've seen stories about active trials, especially criminal trials, that are dragged on in the press. Every time a ruling is made, every time an adjournment is had, then it's in the press. So why the discrimination? Why is it that when it comes to so-called civil matters, some of them cross over into criminal activity? Because when an attorney files fraudulent documents in court or fraudulent statements in court, and a judge sits there and allows them to continue using it when the evidence in front of the judge is saying this is fraudulent, the judge is facilitating the crime, because it is a crime under the Law Reform Fraudulent Transaction Act that was passed in 2013. Fraud is fraud. It's not a civil matter. But that said, judges have sat around and allowed these attorneys to completely come into court with the fraudulent statements and documents and keep filing them and repeatedly filing them. And despite the evidence in front, they allow them to continue. And that certainly is a major issue. And again, because the seeds of fraud and corruption was planted, was fertilized, and was nourished within one of our primary institutions, the court, then obviously when somebody gets caught, the attorneys who represent these persons are going to take advantage of the corruption there. And so we're going to find that Mr. Bolt, like so many other persons, are victims of fraud under the guise of civil litigation, that there are no recourse, or there isn't any recourse for them other than to watch this trial, or the trial go into criminal court and is dragged out until the matter is dismissed, or nobody gets any sort of punishment, or the punishment is so minimal that it's actually profitable for it to continue. As I don't know if I've said it to you in the past in any of my videos, but one of the mantras of especially US major corporations is that if the cost of committing a crime is less than the profit from committing that crime, well, continue to commit it. And that's what's happening in the Supreme Court. The cost of committing crime in the Supreme Court and defrauding persons like ourselves and my partners of our property and our rights, civil and otherwise, because it's a human right violation for the court to make rulings that prevent people from enjoying their property, enjoying their freedom to go work and become employed, which is what's happening in our case. Our business was started in 2004. From 2004 until now, our business is put on hold because of what's going on in the Supreme Court with these judges. And we've named judges, and we have a list that the investigators, when they are appointed, because we're not stopping until something is done, that these judges need to be prosecuted for violating the rules of the court. And if they violate the rules of the court, they're violating the laws of the land and the Constitution, and they should be punished. And I'm advising those persons that, one of the things you could do now is to resign before it gets too late. Maybe by some statute of limitations, you might be able to get away with the fraud that you've been committing. And I'm not going to apologize to anybody who has robbed me or tried to rob me and then sit there and think I shouldn't complain or say anything about it. That's like a woman being raped, and the rapist is going to turn around and tell her to thank him, or she shouldn't complain, or he shouldn't complain, because men get raped too. You get robbed and the robber turns around and say, you better thank me for not doing anything else, and you must accept it. It's no different than when that happens in the courts. When a judge sits there and takes people's money and rights and property and think it's okay, when it's not, it's a criminal act, and there is no apology for that. So again, we're pointing out these things because we have evidence to back us up. And when we go to the press or anybody in the media or social media to get this out, we can say that we are taking all liabilities away from them, because I want these people to be prosecuted. It's not enough for them to take a person's life, 15-20 years of a person's life, and think it's okay, because that's what you've done. My partners, myself, for 14 going 15 years, we've been tied up with this nonsense, only because one or two persons in the court refuse to do what the law requires. Now we need to have these matters resolved, and the only thing that needs to be done is for them to be set to be heard, and we can't get that done. Why? And everybody's silent. The Integrity Commission, we filed stuff with them up to last week. Anyway, what we want to ultimately achieve, our objective, is to first expose the fraud and corruption and expose those who are involved that we know about. We don't know about everybody, but we know about that. And we don't have to go into much details about it because it's in international news and the media and regulators and observers that Jamaica is one of the most corrupt court systems in the world. I mean, the country itself is corrupt. So statistically, if the country is corrupt, chances are any institutions you have, you're going to have persons in there that aren't afraid to execute corruption because it's profitable for them. Excuse me. So we want to expose it firstly. Then we want to invite others to participate in the exposure, because when the people start pressuring these people and go public and make noise about it, then that's when government will start acting, because this government has no plans to act, because we've been asking them to act on it. And that goes out to the Prime Minister as well. And I was hearing a speech given by the Prime Minister. I don't know where it was, but he was talking about a new measures or time for being committed for gun crimes and murder and all of that kind of stuff. And apparently people are now getting less than 15 years for murder. Now we've been locked up in in the Supreme Court, literally, with our lives and businesses being put on hold for more than 15 years. So in short, if we had killed a couple people to protect our rights, which we are entitled to do, protect our rights as a national right, natural right, and constitutional right, those persons are robbing us. I think they can just step in our face. So if we had gone and killed a couple of them people, we would have done the time and be out. So that's what that amounts to. Now he's saying they're getting 30 years. But 30 years for murdering people is not enough. Especially, I could understand self-defense. I don't advocate murdering anybody, so I'm not in support of the death penalty. Because that's what it amounts to. And we should be able to point to our people that, murdering other people because they committed murder is not enough. If you catch them in the act and it's self-defense, then that's a different matter. But to sit there and contemplate and manipulate and how we're going to do it, and it's premeditated murder, which is what we're convicting them in the first place. So I'm not in favor of murdering anybody. However, I'm not in favor of taking anybody's right to live, which is what the Supreme Court judges were allowing John Graham and Alexis Robinson from Miles Fletcher and Gordon to do with people's lives. We've had partners who sat around and waited patiently for this thing to be resolved, and they're no longer with us. And that's sad, because you're taking people's lives, you're destroying their hope and their quality of lives. They could have enjoyed their property and moved on. Sorry. What do you call it now? Okay. I guess somebody has been kidnapped. Sadly enough. Anyway, so we want to expose it, which we're working to do. We won't be giving up. A lot of my partners now are on board, those living in the US, those in Jamaica, and we've also been asking other individuals to assist us there on social media. So I want to thank those parties who have been assisting us in getting the word out, because they themselves are now recognizing that the crime of fraud should not be tolerated, or corruption, because it leads to situations like Mr. Bolt is now experiencing, and not just Mr. Bolt, that I've been saying, the other persons who have been defrauded. And so we're inviting others to participate, not just look at the videos. Click the like thing, send it to other persons, whether you're church brother, sister, we don't care. Send it to people and tell them they need to participate, because you can't be in a country and see it going further and further down the toilet and we do nothing about it. There are some of us who can escape and go elsewhere, but the vast majority of Jamaicans shouldn't have to be dealing with this. We want to teach our kids to do the right thing, don't scam people, but at the same time we have judges who are in court with attorneys scamming people and destroying their lives. We need to make it stop. We want to organize a movement to eliminate fraud and corruption. So in short, hopefully out of this we want a structured organization that will take on the mantle of leading a charge, a permanent charge against fraud, corruption, identifying the fraud, exposing it and logging it, and find ways to prosecute people so that we can eliminate the fraud and corruption. Now, whether we do it 100% or not, we never know if we could get to that goal. However, if we just ignore it because we say, oh, it's going on and there's nothing I can do. Maybe there's nothing I can do, but there's certainly a lot we can do. As I said, the finger is no good on the hand. Can't do nothing, one finger. But the whole hand can deliver a tremendous slap if we all work together. So imagine thousands of hands, working together to slap down this level of criminality that's going on. And then we want to establish an oversight committee that will be there to publicly audit the courts on an annual basis. So we audit the court, we see what's happening with the finances of it, with the filing of documents, what's happening to the documents, why is it documents disappear, why is it that documents are deleted from the soft copies on the computer system or in the database. We put up cameras in those areas, we monitor it, we see who's signing out and who's signing in, and we look at those persons when files disappear for them to explain. Now we have technology can solve a lot of the problems that's going on. Some of the major problems that's going on in the court is that, with us for example, is that files disappear. They can't find files. We have a matter there now that's all related to this very matter, where the case has been assigned 3 different case numbers. So when we file for an application under one number, of course, I am presuming the argument is, oh, well, we can't find that number. So I wrote to the registrar and provided evidence. So why is it that this matter has 3 different case numbers? And I was told, oh, we'll get back to you in a couple of days. It's been months. And I said, we have the matter with a pro-government agency, the FSC. And that's not going anywhere because it's a government agency. So our rights are being suppressed over an agency because the government is involved. And it's a conflict of interest for the Attorney General to be defending any criminals. Whether they work for the agency or not, let them put up their money like everybody else and file their defense in court. And if they're vindicated, then certainly they get reappointed. But they shouldn't be allowed to continue working and have the very taxpayers' money and a taxpayer that's suing them to pay their way through court. So there's a conflict that must end. The other major conflict that must end, because it's unconstitutional, is when a judge makes a ruling in court, any level, and then, for example, the Supreme Court, the lower tribunals, whichever court, makes a ruling, and the other party, the adverse party, or the party that the ruling is adverse to, wants to appeal that matter, they have to ask the very judge that makes the ruling. Now, common sense, we're not idiots. Most judges who make a ruling are going to tell people, no, we won't deny you the right to appeal. And I said, deny you the right, which is itself contradictory, because if it's a right to appeal, then the court can't deny it. And you have a right to access the court. And when you have the right to access the court, you don't only have the right to access the lower tribunals. You have the right to access the judiciary, the entire court system. And if the process is, if a ruling is made and the Constitution gives you the right to appeal, as I said, no judge has the authority to overturn that right. So why should you have to ask a judge the right to appeal when they make a bad decision? So in most Western countries that I know about, it's automatic. A decision is made, you have 20 or 30 days to file your appeal. And that's the way it should be. So a rule like that, that's unconstitutional because it denies persons the right to access the court. It's a right. And again, I'm going to emphasize the word right, because if it's a right, then it's not the judge's discretion to deny you that right. But they take all of us for idiots. So judges must stop being allowed to deny people their right to appeal. Because when you do that, you prejudice the person's case when it gets to the appeals court. Because a lot of the times you can now file for the appeals court, to overturn that decision. But here, what's happening there? There is a further delay. When you get to the appeals court, a lot of the times the appeals court does allow a person. But then, why should the appeals court be allowed or exposed to that unnecessary responsibility when the Constitution says it's automatic? And a lot of the times it goes to the appeals court, the person is successful. A lot, not all the time. So those persons who were denied by the lower tribunal, if they didn't have the fortitude to go challenge it in the appeals court, would have technically lost the case when they shouldn't have. And then of course we have bad rulings in the appeals court sometimes, like every other court. When that is appealed and it goes to the Privy Council, what did the Privy Council say? That they see some of the worst rulings coming out of the Jamaica courts. So to avoid all of that and to cut down on wasting time, resources and money, because the applicant seeking to appeal or right to appeal must file a whole bunch of paperwork that's often lost. And this is paperwork that a judge has to spend time to go over. And after, if the judge, the court, the appeals court grants the leave to appeal, then you have to file a whole bunch of papers again. It's wasting money, it's wasting time, not only for the litigant, but for the courts. So whereas the court could have just had an appeal, reviewed one set of documents, made a decision and get that thing out of the system, they literally have to try this thing 2, 3, 4 times. Makes no sense to me. When you're running a business, then you need to be as efficient as possible. You eliminate waste. Waste costs money and it adds up, and it's a burden on any business. And the court has to be run like a business, like a corporation. And that brings me to my other point. Why are we having judges who have no background in business management, none at all, managing the court? Why is a Chief Justice managing the court? The Chief Justice will be managing the legalities of the court, but the government or the court must set up an administrator or management team to run the court like any other business. And if they don't function, you fire them. But you need management in place so that place, the judiciary, the courts, are run like an enterprise. And therefore you can monitor waste, you can determine what's not necessary, and those decisions which are conflicting to judges. Like as I said, one of the problems we're having is that we have matters in front of a judge, a Chief Justice, who doesn't want to act on it, and we have nowhere else to go with it because it stops with the Chief Justice. And until the lower courts make a ruling, we can't go to the appeals court. So we're stumped and stopped in our position if this lower tribunal Chief Justice wants to screw us around. And that's what's been happening. Okay, him just shut him out, him don't want to do anything, and therefore he's saying, well, I don't have to do anything about this, I'm just going to let it sit, and I'm going to ignore all these pleas and writings that we need the matters set so we can go on with our lives. So those things can be eliminated and avoid conflict of interest. And as I said, in terms of judges, when it comes to economic matters, in the courts, you can't have a judge who has no background or understanding of economics making decisions about economics. And I'll point to our situation again. After we applied pressure, and I guess one of the judges who came up in the matter, Justice Anderson, and we filed papers in court and said the registrar cannot allow him to appear on any of our matters because we filed a complaint against him. And within a couple of days, we saw where one of the claims, the second claim which they filed in contempt of the court, the court's orders and judgment, was withdrawn. Now, they had taken out an injunction in that matter, and this is from 2016. They withdrew it in 2021. Yeah, 2021. So from 2016 to 2021, that's what, 5 years going 6 years, they had our business locked down because there was an injunction that prevented us from starting our project again. This was the second time. And you know what? That judge came in that place and stated that, oh, there was no damage done to us by the injunction over 6 years of having your business shut down. Now, there are only two conclusions that could be drawn from that. One, the judge is an idiot. Because only an idiot could come and say, if you shut down somebody's business illegally for 6 years, that person's business not turn no profit, no revenue, nothing. The person is stopped from working. Then you're going to say, oh, that person suffered no economic damage. No. So if him not an idiot, and I doubt if the judge is an idiot, because no, I don't think anybody in the judiciary is an idiot. But if you behave like one, then you should be labeled as one. So you come into court and you sit down up there and you're going to look at somebody and look them in the eye and brazenly tell them they don't have any damages, so the other side walk away after messing up your life for 5-6 years. And this is an extension of the first case, which is now 16 years, and say no damage was done. Fortunately for us, we had an undertaking that was issued by the very claimant, who is now saying we didn't experience any damage, or I didn't experience any damage. I said, fortunately we had an undertaking, and fortunately for us, the damaged parties included other parties other than myself, and the undertaking says the claimant is responsible for damages to all the damaged parties, all damage, full payment. But this judge was trying to pull that stunt on us. Again, this isn't the first judge. We had judges before who attempted to do that. So here he was now again, and I'll say it again, acting like an idiot and trying to tell us. I remember I started out earlier to say, you rape somebody, you murder somebody, you rob somebody, and turn around and think that the person must be smiling. Take it. I guess unfortunately he's going to find out we're not going to take it, or when he didn't take it, because legally him can't even do that, because not only did we have a ruling before that because an undertaking was given by the other parties and we have to prove the damage. In short, when the undertaking stated that we have to prove the damage, what he should have done was ask us to produce evidence that damage was done. Him just walking, never had the matter in front of him before, and then go say no damage was done. So if he's not an idiot, then it brings us into the domain of considering that something funny must have been going on between this judge and the other party. Because how can you not have some interest that you're going to allow a claimant who tied up somebody's life for 5-6 years and beyond, and then say, oh, enough to pay the person no damage when you shut down in business? Then something that must be going on between you and that party. Anyway, and that brings me to the point that one of the challenges Mr. Bolt is going to have is the very court we're talking about. That's his biggest challenge. He's wanting to be robbed, Mr. Bolt. But the other is now you have to go deal with the court. And our experience, you should make sure you review all that's happened to us, because we have it on tape. You review it, because you have some attorneys, and I hope this isn't one of the attorneys out there that you got. You have attorneys who go in there with the intention of doing one thing and one thing only: to rob you by dragging out the matter unnecessarily, filing unnecessary suits unnecessarily, and then charging you. I'm pretty sure the retainer you have to go pay now to even sue starts at probably about $2 million. anywhere between $1 and $2 million, even just to take the person as give him the initial retainer, and you're not going to get back any of that. So you have to now decide, and I say you review the document or the videos that we have, and then you make sure you identify all the things that happen to us, and understand that there are certain judges that you don't want to appear on your matter. We named a couple of them because they're dishonest, and you insist that the judges that are going to come on your matter should have a background in securities, economics, and understanding that, because it could save you or destroy your chances of success. Now, first of all, again, you should also go back to your agreement that you signed with these persons. I think they're SSL, something like that. Go back to the agreements you have. Read all the fine prints, because it just might be that you signed away all your rights when you signed that agreement, and it could be that they had all the rights to invest every dime of your money, and there's no guarantee that you should get back any if they lost it. Unfortunately, that's how the world of investment works. And unless there is some clause in there that says your principal invested is guaranteed, then technically, as far as I know, they can simply say we made bad investment decisions on your behalf or the company's behalf. And what these persons who are slick will do is in fact show that the loss wasn't just on you, but it was across the board. So it wasn't just targeting your account. So you have to get attorneys who are just the typical that's going to go in there and just file a suit, say, oh well, the man lost his money and you must give it back. If your agreement say you can't get back your money because it was a bad investment decision, then they can use that clause to avoid paying you. So read that before you start wasting your money with attorneys. Where I try to get, if you have a guarantee on your principal, then certainly go for it. If it was that your agreement stated that before they made any decision about investing your money, they had to get in touch with you, then certainly go ahead and protect your rights that way. But make sure, because if you don't, these same people can turn around and countersue you for breach of an agreement that you signed. Alright, so just saying a few things to you to avoid a lot of headache, because what you should look into now is to make sure whatever investment you have elsewhere, it's not governed by similar agreements. And again, there's always a caveat in investing, especially in securities, is that if you cannot afford to lose all that you put in, don't invest. So even though a lot of persons out there angry at what happened to you, and it's sad, but again, these persons aren't idiots themselves. They would have made sure that all the documentation, especially with the events of the past couple of 20 years in Jamaica with investors and investors' money, these persons are going to make sure they are protected. So before you go waste a whole lot of money on retaining attorneys to defend a cause that cannot be defended, then make sure you check. Make sure then you take the rest of your investments and you make sure you put it in places that you won't suffer this again. And the other thing is, I don't know what the tax regime is here in terms of losses, but if this was an investment, then I know in the US, if you make an investment and you lost it, then you can write it off and in short get a tax refund. So you probably won't get back everything. And I don't know if, well, I'm saying the US, so I know if you have an investment and you lost it, then you can get a tax refund on at least some of it. So you might start looking at how you could recover, as opposed to taking on a suit that these people are going to drag out in court, and then they turn around and cost you a ton of money. So it's painful, but don't get all emotional and hyped up about taking revenge on them, because again, the corruption in the court, they're probably going to work against you. So fraud and corruption is something that's killing this country and killing us, and we have to fight it. And as I said, the biggest obstacle to you now is the courts, so know how you're walking there. In terms of our business, we're asking everybody to again look at those videos, ensure that you like it. I wasn't on the YouTube thing for until this thing started, but make sure you go there and you hit that like button and pass it to other persons, and so that we can assure ourselves that the fight will go on and that we protect other persons from going along that route. Now the video is under the caption of Jamaican, Jamaica's attorneys scam billions, 1 billion something. I'll look it up and give you. So but anyway, it's on site. Just look up Jamaican attorneys scam billions and it should pop up. But we need persons to get out there and fight it, because ultimately it's going to help to fight what's going on in Jamaica, the crime, and it also helps us to defeat the whole issues that we are facing, because again, we shouldn't allow crime to continue unabated, and that's what's been going on for decades in this country, and we need to put a stop to it. An urgent stop. It's urgent, and I'll update you as to what's happening with our situation in another video. But before I close, I want to point out one of the strategies that the crooks in court use, or has been used. They have even come into court and had a judge, which I probably stated before, had a judge make orders that they ultimately used to try to steal my company in New York. And the irony about it is that when we came back to the Jamaica courts and we brought the evidence that we didn't do all of this, we didn't sell our company, it wasn't sold legally, it was on the basis of fraud, and we presented all the documents, one judge ruled that this kind of thing can't work in Jamaica, and he made a ruling that I could represent my company here. And even though the company that we were trying to steal in New York wasn't the same company that was in court, he gave orders that I was to represent the company. After that, Miles Fletcher and Gordon, this Alexis Robinson, collaborated or conspired with John Graham and Capital One and a Steve Rapier and God knows who else, came back into court and said now they own my company and they're representing it, and they bought my interest, 100% interest in the company. Again, God is good. I didn't own 100%, never owned 100% in that company. And in fact, I had sold all my interest in the company that was in court in August of 2017 and transferred it to new persons who the court must by law appoint as the parties with interest. And we had applications to do that. And this Justice Anderson refused to do it. Up to now, I can't explain why. Refused to do it. But insisted on recognizing the very persons who were filing the fraud documents in court, that a judge in 2018 ruled that can't work in Jamaica. And the so-called purchase of my 100% interest in the company was done in October of 2017. This was almost 3 months after the other transaction was done, the legitimate transaction. And all of that is in front of this court, and every time we go in front of the court and we point it out to the court, the judges defer. In fact, one of the time, this young lady, Miss Alexis Robinson, claimed, oh, that was in another matter. But then she appeared in the matter that she's saying is another matter to file a withdrawal notice on our damages, claiming that we gave her authorization to withdraw the owners. And I said we because I was also representing the parties which I sold and transferred all the interests to, which again the court must recognize by under part 19, I think rule 19.3. Once a party's interest had changed, the court must, not may, not should, must. But we're dealing with this foolishness. So again, we need to take action. Jamaicans can't just sit down and think say it's okay for somebody else to take up on a fight. We fight. The US, the international regimes that's out there, they're not going to do it. You have to clean up your own house. We're working hard to do it. My partners and I. Some of them are not even Jamaicans. But they stand to lose billions of dollars if we allow these crooks to get away with it. These corrupt people. They don't know better than criminals. They are criminals because they're breaking the law. They just not get convicted yet. And I'm saying to them, oh, you know yourself, we've forwarded this video to the court and we forwarded it to every law enforcement agency in Jamaica, and we forwarded it to every newspaper in Jamaica, reputable and others, and we forwarded it to somebody I have a lot of respect for, Mr. Nationwide, and we don't hear anything. And we want to know why. You are the gatekeepers of the safety and security of this country. And if the press failed, then Jamaica failed. In some countries, the press are being prosecuted. When I tell me I don't want to print stuff, why? I'm afraid of prosecution, or not just afraid of doing the right thing. No apology here. As I said, to all the persons, we're on YouTube. We put the video out there so the public can look at it. And it's scamming billions in Jamaica. That's it. That's the theme of it. Scamming billions in Jamaica. Look for it. All right. Thank you. Have a good one.